I was trying to get out of your way. Trying to get out of your way. That's all I'm doing. I'm not gonna argue.
Somebody's pocket.
Calling to order the Plan Commission here in the city of Middleton. Today is November 28th. We do have staff on Zoom, and we are going to start with the roll call.
Adams.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
Paniro.
Here.
Summers.
Here.
And Mayor Kuhn is present. Harp and Erdman Hermans are absent and excused.
Great. Starting with number 1 of public hearings, it is 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock request for an amendment to the approved planned development district general implementation plan for Koteshwar Katukam at 7103 Twin Sunset Road. According to these, we do have 2 speakers who would like to speak. The first one is Kendall Phillips. Are you in the audience? Okay, thank you. Kendall, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Kendall Phillips. I'm the owner of 7108 Twin Sunset Road in Middleton. Congratulations. A once lovely hidden cul-de-sac is now fully exposed, and all the trees that would have helped with drainage in that area are gone. By rezoning lot 7103 and allowing Koteshwar to divide the property to build 2 duplexes instead of 1 single-family home, you've ensured there will be water drainage issues, and the property values of the single-family homes in this area will be adversely affected. Who will be the general contractor for this site? Someone with knowledge and experience with drainage issues? Who will be the landscaper? Someone with experience with drainage issues? We're very concerned. How will the city assure our concerns about this property will be addressed and all the special issues with drainage will be completed? And finally, we're also concerned about overflow parking on this narrow town road, especially based on lot 7103's location to the intersection. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mark Phillips. Thank you. Come on to the front.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's Mark Phillips, 7108 Twin Sunset. I grew up in my parents' house that was built in 1964. My wife and I have owned it now for about 12 years. We have planned on possibly retiring there. Our son and his fiance live there now. I doubt if anyone who lives in this neighborhood has had that long of a connection with the area. I can tell you that the issues with runoff and higher water table levels are worse than they have ever been. We all remember the 2018 flood. This area cannot withstand more development. That said, I beg you to put a lot of thought into the surrounding homes and the possible impacts of overdeveloping this lot, resulting in flooding issues. I guess I would say leave the setbacks as they were. I'm flunk out on that kind of language. And also the fact that most of the homes on Twin Sunset have their own well. Worries such as water quality are a very real concern. All the trees were cut down to allow this development, very large trees. What will replace the trees with their ability to absorb water? Rain gardens, mosquito collectors, probably not going to be very well maintained. After all the trees were cut, all of the brush, etc., was left to dry out for months, creating a very real fire hazard and an eyesore. In fact, Koteshwar had the fire department called to the lot as he was burning waste on the lot without any means to put the fire out or control it. It was a dry, windy day, only had jugs of water. Also, I wonder how the building and lot will be maintained, considering how the lot was kept up in the past. I have taken it upon myself to weed whack the culvert from that lot underneath Twin Sunset Road and culverts that flow south under Evergreen Road, which I would have to believe those are probably some government's responsibility. They're very overgrown. We want water to run out of there, right? And the fact that I've mowed both the sides of the entrance to Twin Sunset Road, including Cotersworth's lot, just as a way to keep it from tall grass. I mean, it seems as though they used to mow this lot, this green space lot, that's an outlet lot for the ice arena. It's no longer being mowed. Anyways, so I took it upon myself to do that. And I try to take very good care of my property over there. Go look at the house. I'm also very concerned about our property values. What are character and scale for developing? What about character and scale for developing an existing neighborhood?
Your time is up, sir.
Really?
Thank you. I appreciate your
Thanks a
comments.
lot for your time. Thanks for letting us know on the 3-minute thing, I guess.
All right, is there anyone else here to speak on the 7103, or if there's anyone on Zoom? Looks like a no.
I don't see anyone on the Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay,
Statements.
we will close the,
Did we receive any statements or emails too? I didn't.
No, we did not.
yeah, I looked this tonight, so thank you. I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And it is 7:07. And at 7:07, I will open the second public hearing, rezoning from Plan Development District General Implementation Plan to Plan Development District General Implementation Plan for 1630 Aspen Commons. We do have a speaker, Dwayne Johnson. Is that this topic?
I was planning on speaking for the GDP and aspect portion of 5 and 6.
Okay.
He's representing the applicant.
Okay, my apologies. So that's for this one. All right. In that case, is there anyone here for 1630 Aspen Commons? And nobody online?
I do not see anyone online who has their hand raised.
Okay.
Statements.
No
And-
statements.
And no statements. Thank you for confirming. It is 7:08. I will go ahead and close the public hearing for 1630 Aspen Commons. Moving to the minutes, were there any changes or additions to the last Plan Commission minutes of November 14th? Hearing none, I will approve the minutes of the Plan Commission for November 14th. And moving on to agenda items. Item number 1, the specific implementation plan modification for design review for mural Middleton Market and Avery Apartments 7622 Lisa Lane.
Yes, this is an application for an SIP modification for design review for a mural. The size of the proposed mural is pretty close to what was shown in the SIP for this development project. It's 15 feet tall, 32 feet wide. And it's located where Daphne was kind of showing on the cursor. That sign, that now leasing sign, has now been removed, and that's the location on the eastern wall of the future Middleton Market food hall site. For this project, we have been working with the applicant for quite a while as they went through the process of doing a request for qualifications with artists. They are asking for approval of the design and color palette so that they can try to get some work done on the project yet this year. And Cardinal Capital is on the call and available to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Bruce will make a motion for design review approval.
Is there a second?
Adams will second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the mural at 7622 Lisa Lane, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda number 2, recommendation on request for an amendment to the approved Plan Development District General Implementation Plan, Koteshwar Katukum at 7103 Twin Sunset Road.
Yes, this is an application for a GIP amendment, and this was a general implementation plan that was originally approved in 2021. At the time, we had a couple of different concepts. Commissioner Bruce was on the Plan Commission at the time and probably recalls this. There were different concepts that were being considered. A fourplex was one of the options. Having 2 duplexes on the site is what the Plan Commission ended up approving as a Plan Development District GIP. But because of the applicant's plan to have each of the duplexes be separately owned and subdivided 2 separate lots, each of those lots would need to be served by water and sewer. And because this is on the edge of the city and the town, Twin Sunset Road is a town road, and the town has indicated that they would prefer not to have city utilities running beneath Twin Sunset Road. I think that by Public Service Commission requirements, the applicant would be allowed to install utilities beneath that town road. But our staff, kind of in the interest of working with the town, worked with the applicant to come up with an alternative proposal, which is to develop the property as a flag lot. What is not changing is the overall density of development in terms of the number of units. It still would be the 2 duplexes that are already approved for a total of 4 units. What would be changing would be the flag, which Daphne was kind of outlining, showing where the utility access would be able to be coming from a city road, which would not require an agreement with the town. And they would still be able to provide access to lot 1. This would result in changes to the setbacks, but it's primarily due to the new lot configuration, because that flag that comes out to Evergreen Road, obviously that side of the duplex is going to have a shorter setback. There are also some minor changes to the impervious surface area, and it's because of the decks that are being shown on the back with the stairwells. The other more substantial change is that we had come up with a solution, and it was based on quite a bit of neighborhood feedback at the time. We heard from a lot of residents from Twin Sunset Road as well as Hidden Oaks neighborhood when the GIP was being approved, that they really were concerned about the appearance of the neighborhood because most of it is single family, and the Plan Commission came up with a solution where each duplex would have a separate driveway access and a separate entrance to the duplex to make it appear that it's a single family home from 2 sides. That option wouldn't be available under the flag lot proposal. So that is a change, but it's not a change in the overall land use type. It's still a duplex, 2 units. And then there were, in the original GIP approval, there were some conditions, and one of them that I just wanted to note in particular was something that was added at the Common Council. It was not in the original recommendation that came from the Plan Commission. But in the course of the council's deliberation, oh good, Daphne is showing it. Okay, thank you. let's see here. I think it's back a page. Okay, here we go. Yeah, 4A, the council added language in their recommendation that said, and to require stringent stormwater regulations with no waiver of fees in lieu of. And now, 2 years later, we're trying to interpret what was meant by no waiver of fees in lieu of. And under some interpretations, you could read that we're not going to waive the fees in lieu of stormwater, which we never do. We would always require, if they're not meeting the standards, they would always be required to pay the fees in lieu of. But after reviewing the video, we think that what the intent was is that we would not accept fees in lieu. And according to what our stormwater engineer has indicated, that would really be bad both for the city and for the developer, because the groundwater situation at that location, it's not going to infiltrate. So it would be more beneficial to the city for us to accept the fees in lieu of. And so we are recommending that that be removed from the recommendation. And then the other change is that Eric, our stormwater engineer, there had been a contingency related to submitting a stormwater plan, including thermal control due to the site being located in the Black Earth Creek watershed and may need to meet a 200-year peak flow standard. When he looked at the city's stormwater ordinances, he said that these would not be the requirements that would apply to 2 duplexes. What we think is maybe from our former stormwater engineer, that maybe that was a holdover from when it was proposed as a 4-plex, because that would then be a commercial development that would have those standards in place. And so what Eric is proposing is that we would modify that language to reflect what the city's stormwater ordinances require, which would be that we would need to get calculations from the developers or from the property owner's engineer, analyzing any downstream impacts of the proposed development. And if there are significant impacts downstream, that the applicant would be required to mitigate those. So we have, based on the more current review, we have revised the city staff recommendation, which is on page 6 of the staff report. That is our recommendation.
Abby, can you just remind me or explain to me why the multiple driveway scenarios that were originally proposed to give the single family look to the duplexes, why that is no longer possible?
My understanding is that there is a driveway permit requirement from the town, and that they have only issued 1 permit for this layout, and it would be 1 access point from Twin Sunset Road. So the city would have to authorize the access point from Evergreen Road. I don't know if the applicant's engineer has anything to add to that about whether the town had indicated if they would not support an additional access point. But I think that that's at least the sense that I had gotten, is that they issued the 1 permit. They wouldn't be interested in issuing an additional permit for another access point.
So even though the city had tried to work with the neighborhood to come up with design solutions, really town input has required this change.
The town, the Twin Sunset Road, the entirety of Twin Sunset Road is under the town's jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't, I mean, if they say only 1 access point, then
yeah,
it's only 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
think the answer to your question is yes.
yeah,
It's
that's,
just, that we just
we can't do anything about
Right.
that. Yeah.
tried to come up with a solution. I worked with the applicant at the time, I think, on the language, and we thought that might be a possibility that a second driveway wouldn't be permitted, and that's what happened.
I just want to step back a little and thank, first of all, great question. I didn't mean to cut that off, but I want to thank staff for working through the utilities not being under Twin Sunset Road per the request of the town. I know that you are working to be good neighbors, and we're trying to work on a border location. So I appreciate that you're doing that and that we're working with them on their one access point. So it's a fair question, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with it. So it's a tough design, but it's the right thing to do. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Can you go back to the recommendation, please? So the reference to the possible downstream impacts, does our stormwater ordinance define what that means downstream?
I can't answer that question. Yeah, do you want to come to the
Okay.
microphone?
Come to the podium. State your name.
Good evening, Bruce Holler with D'Onofrio Codkin Associates, engineer for Kotesh. I don't know, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I spoke with Eric Sorensen last week about the analysis he wants us to kind of look at with regard to storm sewer or stormwater management. And in this case, you know, because it was addressed earlier about the groundwater table, the infiltration portion of it, we don't really want to introduce too much more water into the ground if we already have a higher groundwater table. But with regard to the impacts of this development and how to gauge that, he wants us to take a look at the existing analysis of the existing condition now and look at that basin across by the ice rink there, kind of look at sort of the elevation of the water as it sits now, analyzing the watershed, and then compare it to when we put these two duplexes in and the improvements in, how that changes, how much that raises that water level, if at all. And he's going to kind of, my understanding is we'll see if there's a significant impact on it. As was stated earlier, we would mitigate that on some improvements on our site. Otherwise, if it's within, a certain threshold of less than a half inch, or we haven't determined that yet, but I think he's going to kind of look at it and say, he's going to kind of give us some guidance on what he feels is a large impact or something that we can just address on site.
Okay, thank you. And Abby, I had another question about the first recommendation. Resolution of staff comments with the exception of the comment related to the city's access management plan. But then what is the parenthetical supposed to be telling us?
Daphne, would you be able to flip to the page that has the staff recommendations embedded in the plan set?
I want to make sure, especially in light of the council's addition of language that is proving to be actually maybe the opposite of what they were trying to do. I want to make sure we understand what this first recommendation is.
So I'm looking for the comment about the access management plan that was shown here.
There it is on the left.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So the city's access management plan notes that a driveway should be planned on the lower functionally classified street if possible. So what the engineering staff was showing there is that we would typically want to see the driveway coming from Twin Sunset Road for lot 2. But in this case, there is not an option to have a driveway from Twin Sunset. And so we are proposing that the Plan Commission recommend approval with these staff comments that are embedded, but striking the comment about the city's access management plan because there's no way that we can get the driveway access from Twin Sunset for lot 2.
Okay. So that explains the first part. So the approved lot 2 driveway is shown as exceptions to the access management plan. Why is that not a separate recommendation?
Oh, you mean as a separate recommendation to defer from the city's access management plan for this instance and allow the driveway to be on the higher functionally classified street? Is that?
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is trying to, again, make sure that that the recommendations are crystal clear and not subject to, interpretation only if you were in the room at the time that the discussion was being had. And I guess I would have made reference to the comment on the access management plan, either on the page that it's on, not the page in the document, but the planning document, so that it's clear what that means. And then I would have put approved lot 2 driveway as shown or planned as a separate recommendation.
Okay. Let's see.
So if we know the page or
Would the easiest solution maybe be for number 1 simply to read the part in parentheses? Wouldn't that just address the issue? Because that's what I think the engineering staff comment was, pointing out that it's a deviation from the normal practice. So I think if you simply said approved lot 2 driveway is shown and planned at recognizing that it's an exception to the access management plan, isn't that simply the issue?
possibly, have all the other staff comments in the plan set been resolved?
No. What I would recommend
Oh, I
is
see the issue.
contingent on number 1, making an exception to the city's access management plan and approving the lot 2 driveway as shown. And then maybe number 2 being resolution of remaining staff comments embedded in the plan set.
Right. That's standard language that we use.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse it. See that at the end of the recommendation.
Could you repeat that last one again? Resolution of remaining staff comments in the plan set?
Embedded in the plan set was the way that I proposed it.
And then make an exception to the city's access management plan and approve lot 2 driveway?
As shown, yeah. As shown or planned.
Anyone else have questions or comments?
Having not been on Plan Commission when this was initially approved, can you elaborate on the setbacks that you mentioned and why those wouldn't be subject to standard setbacks now that it's changed?
Yes, we did look at the new zoning classifications to see if any of those would work for this, because we are trying to get most of the PDDs out of PDD and into a standard classification where we have an opportunity. But because of the flag lot configuration, none of the new classifications would work for this project either. The flag lot is required because the Public Service Commission does not allow a water lateral to cross property lines, basically. Each structure has to be served directly from the public street to the structure. That's the issue that we're facing, and that's why we had to create kind of an odd flag lot configuration here where there's just not that much room to site the duplex that's proposed on lot 2 and comply with a standard setback. So when you look at the property, it won't appear on the ground very much different than what was originally proposed, but it's because of that, you know, kind of lot configuration where you have a small bit of frontage on Evergreen Road that makes it difficult to comply, especially with this side setback here. If that makes sense. Because lot 1 is basically this, I'm trying to outline it, but
I
it's.
guess what I'm getting at is there's no need for them to go through a variance process.
Oh, good question. Because it's a planned development district, and it has its own separate set of requirements, it would not need to get a variance, but this is considered a rezoning, and that's why we noticed it as a public hearing and held the hearing, and the council will have to approve this by ordinance, which typically requires 2 readings, but there's not a variance requirement.
Okay.
Because it's a PDD.
And then follow-up question, as someone who's had to get a variance with a stormwater follow-up requirement, what is actually done? Because I am 100% sure nothing was ever followed up on for my particular situation. And I think the contingency was actually, you know, removing structures if it was to be shown to greatly increase stormwater runoff. So what would actually be done to mitigate that if you do come back after this is constructed and show that it's raising?
I mean, you mean if we find out that there's mitigation needed and we put it in?
Yeah, and I
it
think this
doesn't-
speaks to some of the public comments, right, about the concern
Yeah,
after cutting off those trees, like what will actually be done if it is shown to have an impact. I think that's important for us to
Yeah,
understand
and-
and for the neighbors to understand.
right. And what we have some options available. Rain gardens were stated earlier that generally only works during the smaller storm events where, and one of the plans that I think it's the next sheet shows these little rain gardens or depressions in down at the downspouts. We can also alleviate downstream runoff by collecting the having a little holding basin between the duplexes and the backyards between lots 1 and 2. Yeah, right in there. We can kind of berm that off and put a pipe in to kind of hold the water and then release it slower. You know, those are the 2.
I guess I'm not really seeing a landscape plan on here. Is there any intent to mitigate some of those trees you've removed
Yeah,
by planting new trees or native plants that would be highly absorbent?
Yeah, we do have a landscape plan. Here it is, I guess. So we show, in addition to the rain gardens, we have a number of fruit trees and other trees that we're replacing. And then some of the plantings, I think that, well, a lot of the native plantings that we tend to spec are found in the rain gardens where the water is gonna settle. And I believe Kotesh is going to reside, or a relative is going to reside in one of these duplexes. So, you know, they're going to be maintained. They're going to be on site maintaining all of these features.
Okay.
So just as a follow-up, is my understanding that you're going to model the stormwater effects pre-construction and make a determination as what needs to be done, and then if things need to happen, you'll make adjustments to the plan? Or is it that you will do the testing after construction and then make adjustments?
We'll do everything prior. So what we'll do is we'll analyze how it is today without any structures and how it sits today. We'll analyze the basin And each storm event will have some backup or flooding as you get to the larger events. And then what we'll do then is we'll analyze it with the structures and the driveways and the sidewalks and see what sort of impact that has on the level of the water. And so and then depending upon the impact, how much that water comes up, you know, we'll try to put something on site to help mitigate that, you know, or try to keep that water level back, get it back to where it was before in the existing condition.
So he would model it and present the model to Eric, who would review it. And then Eric would make sure that if there are any impacts, that you would have to propose a plan to mitigate any potential downstream impacts.
Right. And we're going to do it on sort of you know, I think this watershed area is about 7.8 acres. We started some work on it. We haven't completed it yet, but you know, it's going to kind of take into account, like I said, the area upstream that comes across. Because right now, water doesn't continue along the ditch. It kind of comes across this property. So we're going to kind of, by lifting the site up a little bit, we're going to keep the water in the ditches as much as possible and get it to the culverts. And not only look at our area, but across the street, across Twin Sunset at the ice rink basin that's there as well, and kind of look at the impacts there. So.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Summers, for the excellent questions and making sure that we're hearing from our constituents who had insights they wanted to share, and to Commissioner Bruce for the follow-ups. I'm really glad that we're talking about stormwater. It affects all of us. So, and thank you for answering the questions. Is there any other comments on this topic? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, if
Or do we
Daphne
need to
maybe
step
could
back?
display it. I sent it to her.
I would like to address item 3, if possible.
Maybe let's hold. Let me keep up, because we got a lot of 7103 today, so. All right. Did we have a motion yet?
So
Well,
1 and 5 are the two that we were discussing.
he's showing it on the screen.
Got it.
And it sounds like Bruce wanted to
Talk about item 3.
talk about item 3, so before making a.
Oh, I thought you
motion.
meant the next agenda item. I was like, all right,
It's a whole
Commissioner
package.
Bruce, you want to talk about number 3, the
No,
required
that-
installation?
That Bruce.
So, go ahead.
So it looks like the intent is the request is to have a driveway or a sidewalk connection from the duplex driveway over to the connection across Twin Sunset to the bike path, and then stripe the roads accordingly. And what we're trying to was, as I looked at that and read that, the first thing that popped into my head was, well, we've got a ditch section there that we're now going to be filling the ditch, extending storm sewer over to the culvert that's currently running under Twin Sunset. And wasn't, I mean, from a cost standpoint, it's a pretty large cost for the people that are just, you know, if it's just for the people in the duplex itself to use it, it just feels like a little bit of extra or a little overkill. I do understand the idea that it gives access to the people in the duplex to get to access these trails, but on the other hand, it also brings people towards the duplex from the bike path too. And so, you know, it feels like the current situation seems to be working, and introducing some additional sidewalk, and I think one of them indicated sidewalk and one of the comments was sidewalk and curb. And so I guess I would need a clarification on that if we do have to move forward with it. But that was just my comment on it, that the expense and
Okay, and so that, let's go back to the list. I appreciate that, but let's go back to the list. We're working on governance here. North side from lot 2, driveway east of the town is minimal to stripping crosswalks on both. Okay. Now, back to my prior question. Did we have a motion on this one? I didn't think so. So do we have a motion at this time? And I realize that my notes need to reflect up here, 1 through 5.
This is Haniro. I move approval of the general implementation plan amendment contingent on the 5 items we see on the screen.
Is there a second?
Adams, second.
Any discussion?
And so it's a recommendation to the council to approve the GIP. Said, right? So it's going to the council.
Well, it has to go to the council.
Right.
I'd like to discuss the requirement number 3.
Okay.
This understand where the sidewalk, where we want to install sidewalks wherever possible and to get pedestrian linkages improved. In this case, if we're not asking it for it along the entire street frontage, and where we have this ditch situation, the sidewalk does seem to be a bit problematic for the benefits. So I just want to see what other commissioners feel on this item, and just open up that piece for discussion.
Excuse me, is it possible I could make a comment or not?
Not, wait, the public comments are over. I appreciate that you reached out.
Thank you.
Can I have staff comment onto the thought process? And if you already shared some of this, I apologize for the duplicate, but real quick, since it's a ditch.
So what's unusual in this case is it's the town road, it's a town cross section.
Okay.
I think that maybe is where, why this is causing an issue. Normally our policy is to have sidewalks everywhere and an urban cross section.
Right.
The town is not in the city's jurisdiction. The Twin Sunset Road is not in the city's jurisdiction. So I can see an exception being made for that reason because of the ditch and the unusual circumstances here. But normally in accordance with our complete streets policy, we would recommend sidewalks everywhere.
And I would just add, it is extraordinarily difficult when the city goes to add sidewalks later.
Yeah.
So usually we want to catch it on the front end where it's possible.
Could we add a condition of approval that would add a note to the CSM or plat, whatever they're doing here, that would indicate that the property owner would waive objection to the future assessment for the sidewalk?
I don't know. I mean, if the city decides to add sidewalks at a later date, we can assess the adjacent property owner. It's just that it becomes challenging for the council in particular, because rather than looking at it as the benefit of not having to had paid for the sidewalk all along, and instead now I'm only having to pay for it, people don't understand why they're being asked to pay for it at the time of installation. So it becomes challenging. So I'm not sure if
maybe not waiving the assessment, but just putting them on notice, I guess, is really what I was trying to get at. Have some way of, see, if we're not going to put the sidewalk in now, which I understand that, but we want to have the ability to do so later if this becomes a urban cross section, or if there's additional sidewalk, that we just give a way to notify the future property owners that this,
I have a question. Isn't there a bus stop near here? Or is that
Not
it?
anymore.
Not anymore?
Not a city bus stop, maybe a school bus, but
That's what I was thinking, that
Yeah,
in
the city bus.
2021, there was talks of bus stops, which might have been
they run.
not the topic. All right, just double checking. All right, so any other comments? Okay. Hearing none.
So what are you doing with number 3?
I'm comfortable leaving it in. I mean, if it is an identified gap in the sidewalk needs map and the comp plan, given the concerns or the considerations Abby has brought up.
And I guess the other thing I would add is that we have not reached out to the town yet, so we don't know whether they're going to support striping crosswalks. Our Public Works Director did say that if they were supportive, that he would be willing to do that at the city's cost. But we don't know whether they're going to be supportive.
They have to grant permission because of the jurisdiction. right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Is that on a timeline to talk to them, say before it goes to council twice?
Well, I mean, if well, the way I read number 3, if the town says no, number 3 is not, or is no longer a requirement.
Correct.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So may I suggest adding 2 words to number 3? So where it says if the town is amenable to the city striping crosswalks. That way it clarifies that we're not asking them to pay for it.
Thank you. I think that would help me a lot.
Okay.
Yep.
does the town have jurisdiction over the installation of the sidewalk?
This would be, well,
This would
It's in the
be
right of way.
on Evergreen Road.
on Evergreen Road and Evergreen, both frontages, Evergreen and Twin Sunset. Both the frontages on facing this lot are both rural on that side, on the north side of Evergreen, west side of Twin Sunset. I think the other side of Evergreen probably is an urban cross section.
It is.
Yeah, so this Evergreen is in the city.
Okay.
So that's our jurisdiction.
Okay.
Any other topics? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the recommendation on request for an amendment to the approved plan development district GIP for 7103 Twin Sunset Road as stated 1 through 5, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Number 3, Plan Development District Specific Implementation Plan, 7103 Twin Sunset Road.
So our recommendation is approval contingent on council approval of the GIP and satisfaction of the contingencies, approval of a CSM, and resolution of staff comments on the SIP.
And I have a question about the recommendation, because isn't satisfaction of all contingencies of approval, doesn't that include resolution of staff comments on the SIP?
I meant all contingencies of approval on the GIP
Okay,
for item number 1.
okay.
Can you repeat that? I apologize.
So basically, 1 is approval, common council approval of what we just recommended. And also approval of the certified survey map, which we are about to do. And then resolution of the SIP, the comments the staff had on the SIP.
All right, any motions?
I'll take a stab at it. Recommend approval of the SIP contingent on common council approval of the GIP and satisfaction of all contingencies of approval, approval of a certified survey map to divide the properties, and resolution of staff comments on the SIP.
Is there a second?
Sunrise will second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the Plan Development District Specific Implementation Plan at 7103 Twin Sunset Road, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to certified survey map at 7103 Twin Sunset Road. Is there a motion?
Commissioner Bruce will make a motion to approve the CSM to divide the property into 2 parcels contingent upon the project being required to pay park fees in lieu of land dedication and park improvement fees, which will be paid at the time of building permit, and resolution of staff comments.
Is there a second?
Adams will second.
Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the CSM at 7103 Twin Sunset Road, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on. Just making sure we have all our speakers. Number 5, rezoning from Plan Development District General Implementation Plan to Plan Development District GIP for apartments, 1630 Aspen Commons.
Mayor, can I just interject? I'm going to abstain from items 5 and 6.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
And it looks like we have Dwayne Johnson and Joe Porter who are available for questions. Is that accurate? Raise your hand. Yes. Okay, great. Starting with number 5 at 1630 Aspen Commons. Staff, do you want to give some background?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Sorry, I had my video off because I'm still constantly blowing my nose, so I didn't want to show that to everyone. But
You are fine. Don't worry.
This project is, as you can see on the screen, it's right next to the Foundry and Greenway Station. We've looked at a couple concept reviews for this site, and then the developers have also received a variance from the airport height limitation. I believe that was back in October that they received that. And so it is for the additional 2 stories that they're adding to the building. And part of that, the reasoning for the variance was because they can't really dig down deeper into the site. So they have 1 level of underground parking, but then they have 2 additional stories of structured parking that's lined with apartments along Aspen Commons. And so that is what bumped the building height up to need that variance. And then I believe in addition to this, they did have a neighborhood meeting a couple weeks ago. I was there with Dwayne and John Lee J and yeah, and we were all there for about 30-45 minutes and nobody showed up. So it was quite an easy neighborhood meeting. No one really had any comments about this. And we didn't receive any comments either during the public hearing process.
I appreciate that, especially the neighborhood meeting update. Thank you, Daphne.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I believe Dwayne sent me this presentation, so if he wanted to, provide any other comments to it, he's available.
With that, do we have a motion? Or any clarifying questions?
I had a question about parkland dedication or fees in lieu. When does is that something that we build into the CSM approval or?
It could be part of the rezoning, or if there's a subdivision of land. Either way, both the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance require that those fees are paid. So for this project, because there is not a CSM, it could be added as a condition on the GIP. it would be obligated to pay the fees.
Yep.
They wouldn't be able to pull a building permit without paying the fees.
Okay,
For the record, we weren't given any idea of time constraints and how long.
ma'am, it's not public comment. Thank you. Okay, so again, do you have any other questions before we get to motions? I apologize.
I'm just writing down a. Okay, I guess unless other commissioners have questions, then I'll make a motion that I move that we recommend approval of the general implementation plan for 1630 Aspen Commons to the Common Council contingent upon the following: resolution of engineering staff comments, completion of the traffic impact analysis, and the developer addressing to the satisfaction of the city engineer any findings of the TIA, public works staff approval of a stormwater management plan, and if necessary, a stormwater management agreement, and payment of park fees in lieu of land dedication and park improvement fees to be paid at the time of building permit.
Summers, a second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the rezoning from PDD GIP to PDD GIP for apartments 1630 Aspen Commons, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do I have to note that Commissioner Bruce is abstaining? Is that accurate? Okay. Item number 6, planned development district specific implementation plan for apartments 1630 Aspen Commons. I'm going to ask for staff to give a 1-minute briefing since it's the second time, the same property.
Sure. So this is, the same property. The only thing in addition to this is approval of the access and site layout by public safety. They do show a fire lane, and we just want to make sure that our public safety, officers can have proper access to the building from Aspen Commons.
Thank you for that. Is there a motion or any clarifying questions?
Adams will make a motion to recommend approval of the specific specific implementation plan to Common Council, contingent upon the following: approval and satisfaction of the contingencies related to the GIP by Common Council, resolution of engineering staff comments, approval of the access and site layout by public safety.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Haniro, I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the Plan Development District Specific Implementation Plan for 1630 Aspen Commons, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And Commissioner Bruce is abstaining. Can you please go and bring
He's
him back? All
I-
right,
I
come on
waved
back.
him in.
Thank you for being very quick. All right. Moving on to the businesses. This number 7, it says specific implementation plan, Community of Bishop's Bay, Phase 7, preliminary plat, final plat. Mark, can you give a
Sure.
1 to 2 minute brief outline?
Might be about 3, but
All right,
I'll
go
keep it
forward.
as short as I can. And Jake Benz is here representing the developer as well. This matters before you tonight because it was referred by the council at their November 21st meeting. Typically, SIPs in the town of that pertain to land solely in the town of Westport don't come before this body because the master development plan, which serves as the general implementation plan for this plan development district, states that the Middleton Westport Joint Zoning Committee acts as operates as the plan commission for Westport's portion of the development. Phases 5 and 6, which are shown in white on the screen, east, it's labeled the Prairie, and yeah, thank you, Daphne. Those did not raise any issues that could affect development of land that is within the city limits. However, Phase 7 does, primarily with respect to the realignment of Bishop's Bay Parkway. The master development plan does acknowledge that that there could be through the SIP process, deviations from the street network and cross sections, deviations allowed in consultation with the Plan Commission or the Joint Zoning Committee and the Public Works Committee, and as design is refined if site conditions merit. So there is some language in the master development plan that allows some discretion at the SIP level for making deviations. The developer and Jake, I'm sure can speak to that, did send us a drawing today. And Abby, if you, well, first, before you leave that, I meant to say Daphne, by the way, this one on the right here shows the alignment. The purple is the original, which is reflected on the left, but on the right is the new proposed alignment. But that's now further refined by a drawing that I received this afternoon. Daphne, if you could please pull that up. There you go. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but this is something that Veerbecker, your engineering consultant, developed as a potential new alignment for Bishop's Bay Parkway, right? Yeah. And so the concern that we had is, you know, as Bishop's Bay grows to the west, what is the implication for that property to the west, which is phase 8? And then one of the questions I had was, is the property owner, since it's a different property owner to the west, the Paulson Land Holdings, or I can't remember the LLC's name, are they aware of this change in alignment? Do you know the answer to that, Jake?
Yeah, please come to the podium and state your name and business.
Jake Muntz, 1818 Parman Street.
Okay.
So 2 questions were.
So first of all, you confirm that Veerbecker is proposing this potential new alignment. But then I was wondering if the property owner, Bishop's Bay LLC, does not own all this property, right?
No.
So is the landowner to the west, the Paulson, I can't remember the full LLC name, but are they aware of this?
Not aware of this. I mean, obviously they're aware of, you can see the dark lines where the old MDP road was.
Right.
They're not aware of the new alignment. You know, this is, Veerbecker put this together at your request, Mark, or Sean's request, whoever had concerns about the alignment of the parkway. In reality, this could change as we proceed with phase 8 or phase 9 of the development. But we wanted to get something in front of you guys just to, I guess, more so give you comfort that, you know, it will connect back. And if you were to go out there and drive in the farm fields, there's really only one place to take this, given the topography towards where Solas is now, or at the most northern part of the road. There's a steep slope just to the south of that, and there's actually some natural burial ground, some effigy mounds there. So there's really only one place to take the road. So based on those factors, that's what Veerbecker drew up.
Thank you. Yeah. You guys stay up here because a couple more questions. So Daphne, if you could go back to the previous drawing, please. So I wanted to quickly flag the policy issues that were raised by city staff review and add that your packet has a long list of conditions that were approved by the Westport, the town of Westport, in their resolution. But the comments you see here are from our engineering staff. And I wanted to flag the policy issues that I think the Plan Commission has the greatest interest in after this, given that it was referred here. So we now have, a better understanding of the alignment of how the Bishop's Bay could connect to the west and how it could return to its route off the screen there. One of the things that Sean flagged is that the curve at the right, the bottom right, southeast right there, yeah, that's sharper than originally envisioned. It's not consistent with the city's subdivision ordinance. The C said the alignment is not desirable, but I presume it means it's still workable, and you wouldn't design something that's not workable. Yeah. But it is a collector street, and so that is going to introduce a sharper curve than we normally have on our collector street. So he just wanted to point that out. One of the comments I noticed was that caught my eye and that I have a suggestion for is that the parkway itself lacks
sidewalk on the north, Bishop's Bay Parkway lacks a sidewalk on the north side of the street. Daphne, if you have the city copier, yeah, thank you. So, and I can pass this down too. Well, actually it's on your screen now, so either way it's the same. So the Parkway Boulevard, as Sean and I talked about this today and in consultation with our city attorney, Sean pointed this out that this was the cross section that was approved. At the same time, the master development plan recognizes that streets will transition into the rural area and be a little different design. But I do think it is important, if you can go back to, so if you see the sidewalk on the left of the screen here, you see the sidewalk there. And then on the far right, the 10-foot commuter trail. So they have the trail as part of their design. The median here is shown as 38 feet. What they are proposing is a 45-foot wide median. So what I'm recommending is that because this will transition to the city, eventually to the west, what I'm recommending is that one of our conditions of approval tonight, if you're inclined to go in that direction, is making a recommendation to the council, since they have the approval authority, is what I meant to say, is to change that median and restore the sidewalk on the north side west of Homestretch Drive. Homestretch Drive is the north-south street in that, you can just show it here. Sorry, Daphne, you're not here, so it's hard to. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. That north-south street is, I believe, called Homestretch Drive. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'm recommending, especially given that there's a major park that's being planned, the Sam Jacobson Park, I'm recommending that the sidewalk begin at that segment and go west from there on the north side of the road. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Jake because this came up with Sean at 5:30 today.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, we had a meeting with Westport last week actually to talk about this, and they like the idea of having the path on the one side. This is why we designed it this way. They don't like the idea of having the sidewalk on the other side as well, just because it's more maintenance for them and they don't have the resources that Middleton has to maintain it. So I think we're fine with that, and eventually we will bring it back to sidewalks on both sides of the road when it connects back to Middleton. But I would just give us some more flexibility to, wherever the boundary line is at the time that the parkway is built. So not put limits on Homestretch Drive, because Westport may have another, however many feet that they don't want sidewalks on either side of the road.
The city limits would start, according to the drawing on the left, it starts here really close to the left drawing. The red line shows the city limits, right? So it's really close to Homestretch Drive. That's why I was thinking that was a logical stopping point. But
yeah, and I think that it's a good idea too, but I do think that in previous meetings before my time, there will be a corporate boundary line shift just to even out the development. As you can see, the corporate boundary line is really random. So eventually with a future plat, we're going to change that. So that's why I'm just kind of, and we'll make it look nice at an intersection for a future road.
I'm gonna walk over because I
Yeah.
think I'm following you, but I want you to point to it.
so this is the current city limit, the
Yeah.
red line. And so what Jake is saying, that they would like to propose a future border shift, which of course can't just be done with the plat. There's annexation and
That's okay,
de-annexation.
I
So
get that, but more, you were talking about this line here, right? The homestead.
right, home stretch.
Okay, home stretch,
Yeah.
thank you. Where is that over here? That's what thank you,
That's-
Daphne.
yeah.
So this is the town of Westport is what you're
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
And what I was suggesting is, as this is going to be in the city in the future, that sidewalk needs to end somewhere logically. And what Jake is advocating is that it happen farther west, where they would like to see the corporate boundary be.
Yeah.
is
And-
that
and-
accurate? Is that, you're thinking it's over here?
Yeah, over there.
And you're thinking it's here?
I was just suggesting it as an idea that I thought of today.
Mark,
Okay, it's a good idea, but I see
I
the
think it's
value
a
in what
reasonable
you're
condition to have on a future phase when it's applicable, but it just doesn't really seem applicable here.
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is that approving this plat would mean that the city's official map will need to be amended to accommodate the shift in Bishop's Bay Parkway. However, that does not need to be a condition of approval. We can do that process separately, and we have some other suggestions with the official map. We look at that document every so often. And so our official map right now shows the route in purple, and it is
a notification device to let property owners know that we expect a street generally in that area in the future. So with this shift, we would want to modify our official map, but it doesn't need to be done as part of this, as a condition of approval. The second theme, I'm sorry, I'm going over 3 minutes. The second theme is that there's a question about vacation of public streets that has come up from our city attorneys. The Homestretch Drive, the north-south road, and then the east-west road, and I can't remember what that's called, below that, right there perfectly. Daphne reads minds. Burning Prairie. So those are both platted as public streets and are proposed to become private streets. So it's not, so our concern from the city attorney is that there will need to be a vacation of the public right-of-way before we can approve the final plat. And so my question and I tried finding out from Westport today, but I didn't get a response back because I emailed them late in the day. What's the status of the timeline for the vacation?
We're working through it with the town and the town's attorney as we speak. So there's a few public notice stuff that has to go out that will be a condition of their approval. But yeah, it's well underway. We have over 55 conditions we're working through with the town right now. So.
But what I'm getting at is that there's strong reservation about approving a final plat if the streets aren't vacated. So that's going to become a concern for our attorneys. Unless there might be a way to have a delayed effective date, which we can discuss further.
Yeah.
The other thing is the plat itself that's in your packet says that it's already vacated, even though it's not. So again, that's a concern, is to approve a plat. If the council were to approve a plat saying it's vacated and it's not, that just creates a legal issue.
Yeah, and I think we can
work through
add
those
some,
things.
work
So
through it. It's something we're already working on. So
I just wanted to flag the major concerns. And then the environmental corridors for Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, there'll have to be some adjustment there. Again, I'm just flagging the high level policy stuff. And then the last is that the city, Sean wanted to stress that we need to verify the adequate water surface for the planned expansion of the subdivision. I know that Veerbeker has done a study or is doing a study, but Sean would like to have our engineering consultant verify those modeling efforts. And what I wanted to point out, and something that I wasn't aware of until today, is that all of this area in Westport is served by water. If I understand correctly, Jake, it's all served by water that comes from phase 4 of a water meter station.
Mhm.
And there's only one path for that water service in. So if that main or any section of that were ever to fail or need repair, there would be a water outage in this area, is my understanding. So that's why the water study is really important for our engineering staff. So.
Just to touch on that, I think we've sent our water modeling over to Strand Associates per either yours or Westport's recommendation. They're reviewing it as we speak. So,
and then lastly, Matt Fleming, our attorney, is really averse to having action concurrently on the preliminary and final plats. So that's something else that will have to be discussed by prior to the council meeting when this goes before council. So that's basically the main things I wanted to highlight, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I do have a recommendation at some point when you get to that, if you're looking for some language.
Does your recommendation include all these topics that you just discussed?
Well,
Excellent question,
yeah.
Commissioner Bruce. Excellent.
You got quite a host of things to.
Yeah, I just, we hadn't had a chance to go through it all with both our city attorney and our engineering staff, and we just got the full list of conditions from Westport last Wednesday.
Yeah.
So we just hadn't had a chance to go through it all, and it's pretty marked up. Actually, there's some more changes that we think will be necessary. So since this is an advisory role for the Plan Commission tonight, and I wanted to defer to Alder Hanairo, since she had expressed interest in this topic as well at council. I just want to set the stage for what our staff review showed after receiving the conditions, and see if there's anything else you wanted us to address.
I'm curious to see the recommendation.
Oh, okay. Well, then Daphne, why don't you? So So what I am recommending here is council approval contingent on resolution of the conditions in the town of Westport resolution, which of course is the one that we've been talking about. There would need to be a condition of resolution of city engineering staff review recommendations indicated on the SIP, civil plans, preliminary plat, and final plat. The third bullet is the one that Jake is concerned about in terms of maybe not including that. And then the fourth is a language that I've mentioned earlier to the town. I didn't see that in their conditions, but any reduction in density in phase 7 does not constitute approval of an increase in density in any future phase, either in Westport or Middleton. So if you were wanting to take action or make a recommendation tonight, I would recommend including these bullets.
Does everything that you talked about previously is encompassed in these conditions?
Of what I addressed tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get into this doesn't get into the procedural aspects of when the timing of the final plat.
Right.
That's something that we're going to have to discuss with the applicant and our attorney and Sean. I think we just are going to have a meeting because we have some differences of opinion here.
I'm sorry, I haven't reviewed this, so I just have two questions for Mark and Jake. One is whether you could provide more information on the environmental corridor issue that you raised, Mark. And then the second would be on the third bullet point, why would it be incumbent on the town of Westport to maintain the sidewalk rather than the adjacent property owner or the homeowners association?
It's a public right of way for the adjacent property owners, public right of way. And so they don't own the sidewalk or whatever, the homeowners. And I don't, I'm assuming that I don't even want to say that. Who maintains the sidewalk in the Bishop's Bay Parkway on the Middleton side? Do you know?
I think it's just the adjoining property owner. If it's a 10-foot wide path in the city, then we maintain those because we have equipment where we can actually go in and plow it.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's just the adjacent property owner. So the city only would maintain sidewalks if they're in front of or adjacent to municipal buildings or city park or conservancy lands. And I was just looking at the plat and it looked like there was an outlot there, but it looked like it was owned by the homeowners association. And to me, that sidewalk would be beneficial to many homeowners being able to safely access the park. So I was just wondering if that's a cost, the maintenance cost issue, if that's something that could be absorbed by the homeowners association rather than the town.
I mean, I don't think it'd be preferred by us and us being the homeowners association or the homeowners, just to speak on behalf of them. But and like I mentioned, just in our conversations with the town, they didn't express any interest in having the sidewalk on the north side. We understand that once we connect, it'll be on both sides, but we will have on the north side of this phase 7 parkway area, we just planted about 163 apple, pear, peach trees. So it's the orchard of Bishop's Bay. And we have mowed paths going through there that the HOA already maintains. So, there's not a concrete sidewalk, but there are paths to meander through the orchard and then back up and connect across to Sam Jacobson Park. So.
But mowed pathways are not accessible. So
that's why there's the 10-foot path on the other side.
And can you answer the question about the environmental corridor issue?
I was just flagging, that was a comment that Sean had, it's on the plan set, and I actually don't know any more detail besides that. I just wanted to point out that, there it is, thank you, Daphne. Yeah. That's all I know.
We go to a CARPC meeting. I believe we did that as part of the phase 6 plat. So
I just was trying to call out the things that Sean had noticed and things that I had noticed as policy issues of interest to the city. We've had a long conversation with the development team about Westport's interest and that this is in Westport. We are trying to be supportive of the project and provide information to Westport to help make sure this is the best design for what they would like to see. The reason why I suggested the sidewalk on the north side is because this is proximate to city land, and I would imagine city residents would still be welcome to go to that park. So it's only a few hundred feet from the city boundary. So that's why I thought it made some sense to have access to a regional park like that. But that's where that recommendation came from.
Well, you know, I love walking and I love biking. But as I'm sensitive to our neighbors to our west, I will remain sensitive to our neighbors to the east. And that's where I stand on that. That's not an actual comment, just so you know. Can we go back to the list?
So is the bullet number 3 requiring the construction of a sidewalk or just making accommodations so that a sidewalk could go in the future?
Well, the idea was to add the sidewalk to the design. That was my suggestion. And again, the reason why it was actually Sean who flagged this is because the Bishops Bay Parkway, this design was approved as part of the general implementation plan. And so this is a way that this project is deviating from the general implementation plan. I thought this would be a reasonable compromise. That's why, I decided to end it at the major north-south street by a park, recognizing that the path is on the south side as well, as Jake noted. And the thing is, we don't know. That's been one of the challenges is we don't know where that future corporate boundary is if there's going to be a change. We keep hearing that there's an interest in a change, but that doesn't mean the city will consent to a detachment of land from the city to the town. It doesn't mean that's going to happen. And so originally the developer had phase 7 and phase 8 together. And Randy, you'll remember this because you were still on the joint zoning committee when it was proposed. And at some point this summer, I think it was in June, the developer decided to decouple phase 7 from phase 8 because phase 8 raised a lot of policy questions. And so phase 7 still raises the policy questions a little bit because the road is being realigned and we don't have an urban, we don't have the sidewalk on the north side. The other stuff is admittedly quite minor and is technical and procedural in terms of vacating rights of way and things like that. We'll work through that. But from a policy standpoint, and there's also another submittal that they've turned in that also is raising some policy questions. So I feel like it's our job as staff to flag what those policy questions are when they are deviating from the master plan.
Well, I think you did a nice job of analyzing it. I think that you recommended recommending approval and the contingencies of the 4 items makes sense to me, including the additional sidewalk. Does not seem like a significant cost or issue for the development or Westport or future homeowners. I think there's a big benefit as we know, we're trying to get sidewalk everywhere, as we just talked about. Yeah. So I'd be supportive of that. It would be nice to see how this all shakes out in the future, what happens as we come into the city.
Okay, that's good stuff. Do we have a motion? Was there a motion needed or is this just advisory, you said?
As I mentioned, I know phase 6 didn't come here and I don't think phase 5 did either, but this was a referral from the council and we saw an opportunity to flag some of the policy questions. Is it required that you take action? No.
Okay. Thank you for
But
clarifying that.
it's here and a council may want to have a report on what happened with the referral. So it probably is advisable to have a report back.
Commissioner Bruce will make a motion to recommend council approval contingent upon the 4 bullet points that are listed in front of us.
Summers will second.
Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the SIP for Community of Bishop's Bay Phase 7 preliminary plat. Do I stop there?
It's all those things, yeah.
Final plat.
Yeah,
On condition of the resolution of conditions in town of Westport, resolution 2311, resolution of city engineering staff review recommendations indicating on the SIP civil plans preliminary plat and final plat narrowing the median of Bishop's Bay Parkway west of Homestretch Drive so as to accommodate a 6-foot wide sidewalk on the north side, and any reduction in density in phase 7 does not constitute approval of an increase in density in any future phase, either in Westport or in Middleton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to zoning signs and outdoor lighting ordinances and zoning map. I'm going to ask for staff
yeah.
brief comments.
May I have more than 3 minutes again?
Yes. I will not count.
I think our consultant, Ben Rohr, is probably present as well. I haven't looked to see if he's here, but
He's here.
good. Ben, why don't you introduce yourself, since you're joining us tonight, and I think we have some members who probably haven't met you before, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Mark. Hello, all. My name is Ben Rohr with Vanderwall and Associates. I've been the guy that's referred to as the consultant in all of the documents that you've seen thus far, and we've been working together with the city. Vanderwall and Associates has for a very long time, so you're probably familiar with several of my colleagues as we help the city with a variety of different topics. I've been working with city staff for the past 2.5 years on the development of these various ordinances that are before you today. I'm very happy to get to this point in time, very happy with the ordinance, and hope you are too. And so we're all here today to hopefully move this thing forward towards the finish line. Thanks for having me.
And we invited him to join us to answer any questions that are coming up as you do your hopefully final review. So the memo is a little bit different format this time. I basically highlighted the major policy issues, the 3 big ones, and then it's specific changes by article, so it's sequential. Impervious surface ratios has been the hot topic the last few meetings. We specifically, I did an air photo analysis. I don't know if you want to, can you quickly pull that up, Daphne, please? So we, of course, at the public hearing had input from the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy and Herb Garn, and also some speakers from other speakers who were during the public hearing, residents who expressed concern about impervious surface ratios, and we've gotten some emails on that topic too.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't think it was feasible to cut in half the impervious surface ratios, as was one of the suggestions. We also felt it was really difficult to add a structure, a system so that you could have basically a bonus or add impervious area if you had a disconnected surface. The concept of accommodating on-site your impervious, your stormwater management in a way that would build into that an incentive to have greater impervious surface area. The problem with that is every site plan modification, whether it's putting in a new house or adding a patio, would then need to go through an analysis by our stormwater engineer. And we felt that that was going to be very challenging for us from a staff resource standpoint, and there'd be some subjectivity, and frankly would also increase the costs for, it would have to involve calculations for each property by the homeowner. So we felt it would be simpler just based on this air photo analysis. What I did is I took a flight around the city from my desk and looked at different sites that I thought had more impervious area than typical. And so I selected a few just at random, no particular reason for any of these addresses other than it looked like they either were typical of the neighborhood, or in some cases it looked like they had a lot of impervious surface area. So I almost didn't put the addresses on here, but I did. So as you can see here, I don't want to go through all these. I assume you looked at them, but the
Yeah, I
reductions.
want to say I do actually appreciate
Yeah. So the
addresses because when I was looking at it, I could kind of feel like what neighborhood was it, like
that's why I
Hubbard.
did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Hubbard is downtown, so they kind of do have some more cement down there.
Yeah.
On the south side with Stonefield, they have
Mhm.
more grassy, so it was actually making sense for the
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
I mean, but I just want to emphasize, I wasn't trying to pick on anybody in particular.
No, and I
was
saw the
just- so,
marigold and
Yeah.
Laconia.
So,
Thanks.
and then what I did is I did the proposed zoning designation after the address as well. And some of these frankly wouldn't comply, that would be non-conforming. If you go higher again, go up again, please, Daphne. So the SRL, there are some that are I mean, sometimes they look like they're going to be a lot more than they are, but here's one on the right, the 1202 boundary is approximately, and again, it sometimes is a little hard to tell what's impervious and what might be a mulch area, it's a little hard to tell, but I used Street View also where I could to try and figure that out. So, and these are approximate, they're within a couple percent, I would say. But, the one on the right would be non-conforming. And if we lower from 50% down to 40, which is our new recommendation at the top of the screen, you can see that we are proposing based on this analysis. I thought there's most single family properties in the city, current R1 properties are zoned, especially in the larger lots, could handle a 0.40 standard. Medium, we're proposing reducing it by 0.05, so from 60% down to 55%. And then the high density, we're proposing just keeping that the same. And what I like about this approach is it just is pretty equal spacing. It's another system that's easy for us as staff to memorize.
Mark, why keep SRH and TRF the same?
Instead of lowering SRH as well. Well, because I felt that we have quite a few lots, well, not quite a few, but we have some lots in the city that are really, really tight, really small. And it just seemed like there's some that are around not far from downtown, basically Clark Street area that are really tight. We have a few examples. And this again is based on an original analysis provided by Ben. And because of the public input we got, we wanted to go back and revisit it. So we started with what we came to you out of the gate with was the original drafts. And Ben, I think, felt comfortable that we could reduce the SRL and SRM. The SRH, if we were to reduce, I mean, the other approach I thought to recommend is to drop everything by 5%, going from 50 to 45, from 60 to 55, and 70 to 65. I thought about that approach as well, too. So that's all I don't have any other explanation other than it was my sense from looking at the air photos that we were basically in the right spot with these changes. TRD is the duplex. I definitely felt that number was high. I looked at a lot of the duplexes on Park Shore Court and a few others in the city.
Which one's the duplex? I'm sorry.
The TRD. So if you go down a page or so, Daphne, toward the bottom of page 2, I would guess, we definitely had. And the nice thing too is keep in mind the SRL is the largest lots, and that's what most of the single family lots are. So we're actually having a bigger impact going from 50 down to 40% over much more of the city, because that's what most of the SR zoning is SRL. It covers the most land area. So yeah, so here's TRD. Yeah, here's a couple examples. So, it just felt like I was comfortable with lowering these. I had trouble finding something that actually was approaching 50%, to be honest, for the duplexes. Ben, did you have anything to add to my remarks?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. We talked with Sean about this specifically, or with Eric, I should say, I'm sorry. With this, went back and forth a little bit, looked at some other communities and where they were landing in this realm of things. We felt comfortable with the reductions as proposed, And we didn't think that pushing it further than where it was in either direction was the route to go at this time.
Any other questions on that section? Keep in mind that we are, with the definition of impervious, the use of porous pavers is still going to be treated as impervious. And the reason we decided to take a conservative approach with this definition is because porous surfaces can become clogged and impervious. And so roof eaves, overhangs, we allow up to 2 feet to encroach into a side setback, or I mean, into any setback, excuse me. So we allow a 2-foot extension, but anything under that 2 feet is considered impervious. So it's not hard to get to 50%, 45 or 50%. You know, before you know it, you could be there on some of these smaller lots. And then the very small lots, it's, you know, we have several examples on Middleton Beach Road where there's impervious surface ratios that are over 60%. So that's why we didn't want to create a situation where suddenly we have a lot more variance requests, because variants are supposed to be based on finding of hardship, and simply building a bigger house or adding an addition, you know, or expanding a patio, and suddenly having the impervious surface ratio be the reason why you can't do the addition. That's going to be tough to get a variance for that purpose.
Can I ask about we've gone over this before about how it's more conservative to include the pervious pavers as impervious surfaces for the reasons that you just cited. But it seems to me if it's more expensive to do the pervious pavers, we are basically discouraging it. And so I'm wondering, is there any way to get some credit for adding the expense of pervious pavers? Can we require a management plan or something? Because it just seems like we're going to be driving people away from that.
Well, I think Alder Hanero, I think the problem is that you know, it would take like annual vacuuming and, you know, some fairly rigorous maintenance to get them to stay pervious. They'd initially be pervious, but they wouldn't be pervious for any duration. So I'm not sure if we want to encourage pervious pavement, then we have to have a way of also then you know, monitoring and enforcing management plan. And that to me seems problematic.
I get that. I mean, it sounds to me then what we're saying is pervious surfaces don't really work. But the city has some and we maintain them. But other than that, I mean, so maybe we want to discourage people from going to the added expense and maybe doing something else to control stormwater.
That sounds like a better approach to me.
I hear what you're saying, Alder Haniro, and we thought of that. I mean, our path system, I'm not aware that we vacuum that path system, you know, where we use porous asphalt. So I don't think we ourselves maintain all of our surfaces. I mean, I don't want to, you know, I'm not trying to cut short what we're doing in the city, but if we have trouble maintaining things, then how can we expect the public to do that? Mm-hmm. That's, you know, and we can always have guides that recommend best practices. In fact, there's a lot of things in our code, especially the landscaping section, where we are really moving and giving incentives to use native plantings and things like that. So we're doing a lot of things with, you know, bioswales and other designs that are really good for maximizing stormwater infiltration. So at the same time, we have to administer a zoning ordinance, and to make it so complicated to try and administer it, not just as, I'm not talking about us as staff having the difficulty, but having residents jump through all these hoops to try and come up with the calculations we need to approve their site plans. You know, I think that we have to find a balance, and that's where we're coming from here. I would add that I didn't provide any Middleton Hills examples or any examples from PDDs in the city, like Hidden Oaks, Middleton Hills, you know, other neighborhoods. But Middleton Hills is especially high on impervious surface areas. My own neighborhood. I wouldn't be surprised if there's properties that have 80% because the overhangs go right up to the lot line in some cases. And the key with some of these subdivisions, also the other thing we need to keep in mind, and I forgot to make this point earlier, is you can design a subdivision and have really good stormwater facilities that are off-site, off your lot, and that factor in a really high impervious surface ratio. And the zoning ordinance needs to be flexible enough to recognize that there might be some designs of a subdivision like Red Tail Ridge, for example, which has outlots with stormwater management. So we didn't want the code to be so onerous that it creates all these issues that don't need to be created if the overall design of the neighborhood is already taking those into account. I don't think we are, given the experience we have with only having lot coverage in the past and not factoring in impervious surface area at all, we're already making a big step forward by going from only allowing 40% impervious instead of 50%. There's going to be quite a few properties that will find that challenging to meet, as shown in the analysis, air photo analysis I did. So it's, you know, I just would, and the other thing is that the greater the density, it's based on this because you have a smaller lot. What's smaller geographic area, smaller surface for rain to fall on. So we're really maximizing with SRL going from 50 to 40%. That's, you know, all of Stonefield, Foxridge, Northlake, many other subdivisions that cover a lot of geographic area in the city that suddenly have a 10% lower impervious surface. So I think we are getting more benefit by lowering the SRL and SRM than we would if we tried to find another number for SRH and some of the higher sites. So that's just how we came down on it. I hope that
Thanks.
helps.
And I do appreciate the changes to the impervious surfaces, the percentages. So thank you for that. And I hope there will be more changes in the future when the stormwater ordinance is revisited. And I do think, I know we had some correspondence, Mark, you, me, and Eric Sorensen, about in the future creating an overlay for maybe the Pheasant Branch watershed or the TMDL that we're required to meet. And I think these are all things that could be built into that. I had a question about curbing, and my page references are all cattywampus, is that the word now? I read in the zoning code, I think it's page 201, but maybe of the document itself, curbing is only required adjacent to buildings and planting islands and some others. And I was wondering, I know Herb Garn in his comments about low impact development talked about curb cuts, not requiring continuous curbs. So I'm wondering about the requirement that planting islands have curbs all the way around them. I mean, I could see if it's raised, but if it's not, like, I'm trying to think of Cromrie, how they're set up with their rain gardens.
We do have language in this section that requires positive drainage away from the islands. I haven't found the exact language yet, but
I think if you search for island.
well, I'm looking at my paper copy.
Yeah,
right
the Wi-Fi is a little slow to see.
But I'm on page 201 and I'm close. So yeah, here it is. You know, it does say, or other alternatives to the installation of curbing may be considered by the city engineer. So our code does recognize, it provides an exception to the 6-inch curb rule. Is that not, I mean, is that, you want it to be strong? You basically don't want to allow
Well,
curbing? Or-
Daphne, you just went over it. It was the previous thing. Is it this one? Nope, it's the
Next one.
Yep. So for industrial uses within industrial zoning districts, curbing is only required adjacent to buildings, planting islands. And you're saying, Mark, that elsewhere it makes it clear that explain what you were saying before.
Well, the language, it's right above it in 5A. Other alternatives to the installation of curbing may be considered by the city engineer.
Okay. And that's not going to create, having the city engineer weigh in on such things isn't going to create a burden?
No, the level of detail from our engineering staff, they do a very careful review of all plans. Just ask pretty much any developer. And you saw in all the yellow comments today on the Westport, the Bishop's Bay. I mean, that level of review is done by our engineering staff. They're very thorough. So, and I think knowing Sean and his team, they're very conscientious, especially with Eric as stormwater engineer, on ways to address stormwater, making sure we don't create problems. And if they see opportunities for improvement on a site plan, they're gonna do that. Plus, as you all noted already, we're planning to update our stormwater ordinance in the next couple of years, I think. And we're always looking for ways to minimize stormwater impact. We all went through 2018 and we know what that's like. We don't want to create these problems. And so I think the ordinance as written is really flexible enough to allow that discretion to have not necessarily impose the requirement that we have curbs everywhere. In fact, the route around, there's some streets in the city that use ribbon curbs that aren't raised curbs. They have Frank Lloyd Wright Avenue, or up on Kenyon, what's the street, but Hillcrest Avenue in Fox Ridge. They use alternatives to curbs that that hold the edge of the street with a flat surface, a flush surface with the street. So, I mean, the city has, especially when we plan new neighborhoods, we do look at all those options for mitigating impacts of stormwater.
And then finally, one last question about impervious surfaces. And maybe Ben, can we help us with this? How will our impervious surface limits affect the ability of property owners to construct ADUs?
To construct what?
ADUs?
I don't understand the question, I guess.
Well, I mean, one of the things we're trying to do is make it possible for everybody to build an accessory dwelling unit. But that's, I'm gonna guess, increases the impervious surfaces.
Well,
I'm just wondering if there's been any analysis of that, because on the one hand, we're trying to encourage this, but on the other hand.
No, so I mean, that's again why we don't want to lower. Yeah, it is, but we don't have many detached. I mean, there are some detached buildings that I saw with aerial photography. So if we imagine that those are ADUs, let's say a pool house and the pool itself, there were a couple of those photos in there. If that was occupied instead of a pool, if that was a detached structure as an ADU, I mean, it's easy to see how you could start getting above that ISR ratio. And that's why we don't want to lower them too much, because we want to encourage other designs. So, I mean, other ADU structures. With ADUs, though, we require them to meet the side and rear setbacks. So if if there's a detached structure, if it's not a dwelling unit, then it can be 3 feet from a rear or side lot line. But if it has a dwelling unit in it, or if it's over 15 feet in height, then it has to comply with setback regulations, which means generally it will be attached in most cases. Detached structures introduce a lot more impervious area because they have their own roofs that stick out 2 feet, and so it's competing. These are all really good questions, and we're trying to balance and sometimes have competing goals that we're trying to meet.
Well, yeah, I think I would flag this for a future update to the code to maybe consider if this is having an impact. If it's hard for people to build ADUs because of our impervious surface ratios, then maybe there's a way to grant some sort of exception in the code for ADUs specifically, because building one in an existing, an area with existing housing would have less of an impact on stormwater than taking farmland and putting up new buildings. So
If I may add one thing, and that is moving forward with development on greenfield sites, I would assume that with this adoption of this code and the ISRs that come with that, that a developer will model the stormwater impact based on the assumption that the full site is built out to maximum impervious area allowed by the zoning. So it's going to make it really easy to come up with that calculation if you know what kind of development there's going to be and how it's going to be zoned. If we start tinkering with the ISRs too much in the future, we run the risk of potentially a down zoning. If we suddenly make something more restrictive, then that could be construed as a down zoning because it's taking away a right to do something with your property that maybe exists now or that would exist with the new code. So we do have to get this right, and we have to be, we want to be within the ballpark, or we want to be more than in the ballpark. We want to try and get this right now, recognizing we may need to tinker. If we tinker, though, I would imagine that we would more likely increase ISRs than we would decrease them going forward. Ben, do you have a reaction to that?
Just for perspective purposes, 40% ISR is lower than any standard that Madison has right now for any zoning district. So their lowest ISR for their largest lot is 50%. So with the 40%, you're moving in the direction to provide more pervious space on a lot than even Madison is in their code. But the more we lower that standard, the greater, the less development opportunities we have in terms of density, infill development, all those redevelopment things that we want to advocate through the code. So like Mark's saying, it's a balance where we're trying to strike between providing as much development possibilities that are out there to facilitate a lot of the comprehensive plans and the city's overall goals, but also meet some of those environmental and sustainability goals at the same time. So that's the balance we're trying to strike. I looked at some other communities across Dane County that we work for, across Plains, Oregon. They have a 50% ISR or similar standard. So I think you're in the ballpark right now. And if you feel comfortable with what you have before you, then I would say move forward with that. And I would also agree with the comment in relationship to revisiting this at a year or 2 years and just see how is it working? What are the impacts? Is it being abused or is it working well? And is it prohibiting things like ADUs? It is an opportunity to test some of these things if you continually sort of monitor them. And that's what city staff does in a lot of respects already. So I think you have the ability to do that and the ability to potentially tweak these later on. But like Mark said, we want to try and get it as close to right now as possible as well.
The future single family zone properties, not properties that are already developed, but as the remaining single family develop, are they mostly low density single family or medium or high? Can anybody answer that?
When you say future,
I mean, well, in the flu map, say.
Okay.
Well,
I guess I would look at it a different way, which is in the last 15 or so years, every subdivision has rezoned to PDD. And I don't think that Middleton Hills would even be allowed, just glancing at, an aerial photo. I don't think Middleton Hills would even be allowed today under the SRH. There are many lots in Middleton Hills that are well over 70%. So I agree with, I think it was Ben who made the remark that we have a lot of city goals around compact urban form, and those are in conflict with the goals around the ISR. But if you think about it, any new subdivision is still going to be required to meet the city's stormwater standards. So what you're looking at is, if you are looking at a lower ISR, that's more privately owned green space. It's larger lawns. They're still going to meet the same standards, but it's shifting where the green space occurs. Is it occurring on the private side as a lawn, or is it occurring through the Middleton Hills pond area where it's an amenity for the whole neighborhood? I mean, to me, the Middleton Hills model is a more sustainable development pattern than some of the SRL properties, because you're just talking larger lots and fewer housing units per acre. So
I think that's where I'm at as well. That's something I've been pondering, because when I did doors in your district, I could get from one house to the next house, imagining that when this was first for sale, you're buying the land that's right there. Instead of buying a very large lot and putting a house on it, it's a very compact, house, and I can hit the next door and hit the next door. And some of the houses are big, it has mixed, development, but it's very walkable. You can get to your neighbor's house quickly. Backyards are small, but people said they really enjoy that because there's different heights and things. But as you say that, it's because of that communal place, and of course it's a pond, so it's good for the stormwater because the water is probably going towards it. But it is something that I'm thinking about, because we want to do less impervious surface. We want to encourage that, but that has it also works. And so I think that's why I'm more just listening.
I would also be worried about if you lower it too much, that could lead to larger lots being platted.
That's what I was
Because
thinking,
people would want to have, I can't build my dream house on this lot because it's only this much impervious area. And so we could have the opposite effect of having more suburban style platting, lot sizes. So
To reach that green
Right.
space. That's a really good point.
well, in Hidden Oaks, I just pulled up the aerial photo and I'm looking at Hidden Oaks, and that's another example of a more recent subdivision that went through a PDD process. And I didn't calculate any of the ISRs. It's not quite as high as Middleton Hills, just eyeballing it, but it might be pretty close to an SRH.
Yeah.
70%, but they're still managing the subdivision stormwater. They still are meeting
Right.
all of the same requirements. They're just not doing it on the private property. They're doing it more holistically for the whole neighborhood.
Yep.
In hindsight, I wish I had to check some of those. The reason I didn't and intentionally didn't is because I knew that they're going to keep their zoning. So I didn't, but I didn't think of it in terms of, this is a style of development that's popular. We know it's selling well. We know that high density, more compact development does have good value. We've had some concerns from residents who've said they're worried that higher density is lower value or is a down zoning, and it's not.
And we want to encourage that compact development. That's the other thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful.
Yeah.
I
point.
I want to support Alder Hanero's desire for additional impervious areas on lots, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we aren't. There isn't this unintended consequence where we discourage the types of development that we want.
Thank you, Commissioner Bruce. I appreciate that.
can we move on from impervious to a few other things? So the exceed maximum principal building height, or the LURA land use restriction agreements, that is something that we have taken out the conditional use references. We made some other minor edits to the section. We would still allow 1 or 2 stories by right, depending on the zoning district, upon entering into a voluntary LURA or net zero agreement. We have restructured the language so that it more closely aligns with Madison's adopted language. There still is some discussion underway between our city attorney and a representative of the spokesperson for the Madison Area Apartment Association about the language. So there might still be a little bit of tinkering with the ordinance. But one of the things we would want to, one of the part of our recommendation when you are ready to make a recommendation, hopefully tonight, is that obviously this will be subject to final city attorney review. Number 3 is the non-residential component mixed use buildings, location of multifamily only buildings. I appreciated Alder Hanero and her help with editing the document, and also some discussion we had with let's see, where did we come up? Oh, it was Kurt Paulson, specifically his input at the last meeting. And then of course, talking with Ben, what we are proposing is that townhomes, multiplexes, and apartments are treated the same in all of our mixed use zoning districts, or I'm sorry, the Avenue, urban, and downtown zoning districts. Specifically, this would mean that for mixed use urban, which is the highest density mixed use development in the city, we will no longer, what this means is that apartments are not required to have commercial when they're mid-block. We just yesterday had a meeting with the developer and who lamented the requirement of having even 33% on a corner property and how difficult that is. And so I think by allowing these buildings to be standalone buildings without a commercial component mid-block in those zoning districts makes a lot of sense and gives more flexibility. That's where we landed with that.
Yeah. No, I think even with the 33% on these corner buildings, I think we're gonna have to see how this plays out over time. We may need to make adjustments in the future.
I don't think I need to go through all of these. If it's the red text, I think that's what we really wanted your feedback on. So we've already covered number 1.
Do we want to handle these one by one, or are you? How are we going to give you input?
However you, I guess as we go, if you have any if there's no objection, we can do it that way, which we've often done. Or I don't think you need to make a motion for each one,
right?
But somehow indicating the consensus of the commission.
So on the ISRs, Alder Hanero, you were out, and I just want to restate that I want to support your desire to try to decrease the ISRs, but I want to make sure that we're not, it's not counterproductive to our other goals, which is compact development. And if we're what we're really doing is then making lots bigger, we're making less compact development. I think that's maybe in the wrong direction. So
are you concerned about the proposed changes, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure that they're, honestly, I don't know that they're necessary, because we still have to do all the stormwater management on anything new. It's going to have to go through a stormwater management analysis. It would affect existing lots though, and additions and so forth on existing lots. So.
Can I ask if the numbers are too much, like say for SRL from 50 to 40, is that where your heartburn is, or is it just the whole?
Yeah, again, I want to make, I'm sorry, Abby pointed out that Middleton Hills probably has many lots exceeding 70%. So it's kind of across the board. I wouldn't, I guess if I were to make any suggestion now, it would be just to take the SRL to either back up to 50 or to reduce it to 45%, and the SRM leave that at 60%. Not much of a change, I guess.
SRL would be what? I'm sorry.
It said 45.
45%, yeah.
And use SRM is at 60.
At 60.
Was his recommendation. SRH, it's supposed to be at 70 as this, and then TRD from 60 to 50. Alder Haniro, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm just trying to be sensitive to the very good comments that we received from Herb Garn asking for low impact development to be built into the zoning code, and it's not. And it's too late to go back and redo parts of the zoning code to incorporate that. And the EPA's own documents, info sheets on low impact development talk about how many municipalities think those things can be fixed in the stormwater ordinance, but that's not always the case. And so deflecting this to the stormwater ordinance is not comforting. I'm okay with a smaller reduction of, say, 5% for the SRL, so down to 45, and even going to 55 for the TRD.
That makes sense to me. I'm guessing you want to keep the SRM at 55 then, because that'd be a -5 for all three categories.
Well, I mean,
Is that what you're thinking?
Yes,
Okay.
right, just go down.
So that instead of keeping some and reducing others, it's
Well, I was actually just hoping we could have a pretty equal intervals, but we can handle this, so we can be flexible.
Yeah, and I mean, I get, Abby, what you're saying about the Middleton Hills development. It's possible that we're going to have PDDs, like it or not, that will try to do things like maximize the community green spaces and reduce the private ones. I hope all private green spaces would not be lawn, but would be natural landscaping. I converted my backyard away from lawn because I realized the only time I was on the lawn was to mow it. And how fun is that? Once your kids reach a certain age, you don't need to go on the lawn. Anyway, so I just feel like this is an opportunity that we have to try to ratchet things down. And I hope control the construction in the future of houses on huge lots. I would have proposed additional changes, not to this, but to lot sizes and single family versus detached homes, as Kurt Paulson mentioned, but I know it's too late in the game for that.
Well, I wouldn't say it's too late, but I guess I hadn't heard that we wanted to do some addition, that there's interest in changing. You talked about setbacks? What were you saying?
I'm talking about the regulating the building, the character of the building, not the character of the occupants. So getting away from, but that's coming up. That's in a different section. I mentally, it's difficult for me to jump around article to article. So
that's fair.
Kind of,
so
once we settled this question of the impervious surface ratios, if we could go back to Article 1.
So if I understand you, SRL would be 45%, SRM would stay at 55%, SRH would stay at 70%, and TRD would go to 55%.
Yep.
And I'd be that seems reasonable.
I agree.
Okay, there's no objection to that. And then number two, the only change there is, again, really trying to work with what the market is bringing us in the form of Red Tail Ridge. The lots, the SRH, reducing that to 80 would really be helpful so that we have that flexibility. Some of these are, what we envision in the future will be largely alley served lots anyway. So Kurt, was it Ben? I think Ben, you suggested, I had actually suggested 85 feet, but I think you said 80. So I don't remember who said it now. I've talked to so many people over the course of this. I don't know who said what anymore. So that would be my recommendation there.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And actually, I didn't want to lose what Alder Hanairo just said. You said you had something in Article 1.
Yeah,
Oh.
she did.
Well, why don't we take that up then?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Under the purpose and intent, a couple things. If you go to section 100103, that's it. This is kind of a formatting thing, but also substance. It's really hard to read that. It's just very hard to see what the purposes are. This lends itself to bullets or, numbered paragraphs. So I would encourage you to do that. I know Madison does the same. At the beginning, any reference to morals, and there are two in this document, I think they need to come out. I don't think the city is here to protect the morals of the community. So I would prefer to see it say this chapter is adopted for the purpose of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public or of the city. I think Madison says of the city.
So instead of morals, comfort, and convenience, striking those.
Yep.
Yeah, it is weird language and it's kind of extra. I concur.
And then it struck me as odd that the very first thing that the chapter is designed to do is to control and lessen congestion in the streets. It seems to me that I'm not saying they have to be ranked, all these items. I think there are 19, but I do think the number one should be what's actually at the bottom of this paragraph, which is to implement the comprehensive plan. I think that should be front and center. I think there should be a reference to climate change because that is an important city goal. So to address and mitigate the effects of climate change.
Very good.
And I think those are the main
How do you
changes.
feel about the preventing the overcrowding of land?
I thought that was a little redundant with some of the density related ones. Because we have one that says to encourage a mix of land uses at densities that support transit and non-motorized transportation and reflect the scale, character, and urban design of the existing neighborhoods. And so that struck me as covering, like indicating that when we consider density, we're thinking about a lot of things. And so I thought the overcrowding of land could be taken out. And also there's a reference to protect and enhance to promote the appropriate density and intensity of development. Those seemed like three.
That is a lot going on in this paragraph.
Yeah.
At least we didn't say kitchen sink. And I think this is probably pretty standard language found in a lot of zoning ordinances. Ben, you'd probably.
But we like to think we're exceptional, so let's be exceptional.
I think your suggestions and observations are perfectly valid. I especially like the comp plan, moving that up, and the climate change. I mean, I think that's great. So this is helpful.
Thank you.
For the ranking, like if you're talking about the climate change, there's a couple different times that we reflect on the environment. So if you're doing bullet points, maybe just putting them more together. I'm sure that's what she was thinking. And the reason I say it is because it talks about protecting groundwater. It talks about protecting enhanced natural resources. You know, there's just a lot
in there.
when it just keeps, and it's good stuff. Promote the conservation of energy and utilization of renewable resources. So it's like maybe just a little reorganizing with my, just pull it together or a more succinct manner. I really do like that. And I like that, you know, as part of your comp plan, climate change thought process, maybe not putting roads next or driving modes, but I think the next comment talks about transit, pedestrian and bikes. Or you might want to go all the way to the actual, there's discussion on the building part, you know, so however you layer it, as long as it has a good flow and we reflect on that, give the comprehensive plan. I think it'll be good.
And then in section 10.1.6, rules of interpretation, the word morals is in the first paragraph, so that would need to be taken out too.
Search for the word morals.
And since we're going backwards, I have a question for commissioners. Noting that it is 9:15 and we are
Starting.
only in Article 2, or still in 1. How do you all feel about seeing this one more time? And perhaps, I don't know if we can start our meeting an hour earlier so that we can start with the zoning code
That was
discussion.
gonna be my suggestion as well.
Yeah, I feel like this has been pushed to the bottom and we're running out of steam pretty quickly the last several meetings, so if we get earlier in the meeting, we still have stamina.
Yeah.
Yeah, start the meeting earlier.
Is that an option for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, we moved it up, what, in July?
That's fine with me. That's fine with me.
Same.
I don't think that we have much else happening on the 12/12. We have 3 other agenda items, but they're very quick and easy.
I will not be able to be here that day. Vacation. I plan my
That's an
vacation
issue.
hoping it
That's
was
an
gonna be
issue.
after the done. But I could participate by Zoom, but I just can't be here in person.
Could you be here from 6 to 7
He's on vacation.
I'm on
Oh.
vacation.
on Zoom?
Well, I can't be here physically here
Right.
because I'll be out of the state.
But I think none of us really wants to spoil your vacation, so that's why I was just wondering if
I
there's,
would love to be on vacation and have this done. That's why I planned the vacation right. To be honest.
We are not going
I'm
to
just being
push
honest.
zoning.
So at
for
the same
your
time, we want to
vacation.
do this right. So I understand that, and that's why I'm making myself available by Zoom. I'm just telling you now, I can't be here in person.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And yeah, and then I guess the alternative is not to impact his vacation at all and just push it another meeting.
I would rather have knowledge that we're making progress, so that when I get back, it's done, to be honest. So, I mean, obviously, I take a lot of pride in this, and we've done a lot of work with a lot of us have done this at the staff level with committees, commissions. The airport commission is going to look at it on Thursday. Alders now finally get to see this soon. So, you know, we don't want to have a product that isn't what we exactly want. I mean, obviously we want to get this right. So I didn't mean to sound flip that I wanted to rush this. I'm just saying that we need to bring this to some closure. And I think these suggestions, every suggestion we've had has been good. And, you know, we also have the public that is monitoring this and not just developers, but also residents who I mean, today, someone came in and asked questions about how the new zoning code would affect their property. I mean, we just have a lot of people that are wanting to see this resolved. Are you trying to wrap up for tonight? Because we do want some guidance on the maps too. We keep putting that aside.
I'm not suggesting that we adjourn right now. I am suggesting that we take care of anything that is urgent. Because honestly, if we go until 10 again,
It's late.
you might get through everything, but for me at least, I will not be saying anything because, and I recognize there are members of the public who sort of criticized comments about being tired that came out at a previous meeting. And I just want everyone listening to understand that everybody here did things during the day, right? This is extra. It's not like we all slept until 11 and started our days later. So if we want to have quality discussion and quality input and quality thoughts, we have to have refreshed, energized commissioners.
Well, is there an opportunity for just a special meeting? Is that possible?
Next week we have council. So
Again,
Okay.
I'm happy. I'm very willing and please, I didn't mean for that to come out the way it did before. I'm happy and willing to participate. It's just gonna have to be based by Zoom. That's all I was trying to say on the 12th. So I would prefer it not be an hour earlier that night. Just because I'll be west and my time zone is gonna be different. But so if 7 o'clock and it was a very light agenda, it's just
Actually, yeah, and this item went away today.
it basically would be focused on the zoning ordinance at that meeting. We don't really
Yeah.
have anything
Well, then
on the agenda.
that helps.
Then that does help.
Yep, that helps.
yeah, tonight we had multiple large projects on it multiple times, and that usurped a lot of our time. So moving on from.
So I guess back to Mark's memo, what are the urgent things that you need?
Well, the red, yeah, if we can keep going with the red text, and thanks for the changes to Article 1, Alder Haniro, that I like those changes. Everything else really in red is all I was asking for your, unless you see something else that you wanted to comment on. I didn't think there was really policy issues with the other things. Number 4 is reduce lot area, lot front, or I've reduced the minimum side setback to 5 feet. So that is consistent with at the SRH.
Just can we talk about that for a moment? That's a multifamily code. When we reduce the side yards, because the building code's gonna be different. Building code's gonna impact that. Typically a 10-foot setback is required for openings in that sidewall. So.
But 5 + 5 is 10.
No, it goes to the lot line, doesn't go between buildings. Well, it goes, no, it doesn't even go, there's even if you own the one lot with multiple buildings on it, there's an imaginary lot line put in there. So
20-foot spacing
kind of
total.
20-foot spacing would be typically required if you're gonna have openings in that, or openings of any size. You can have small openings in it. So I think I'd just like someone to confirm that. I'm a little rusty on those things now, but I'd like to have somebody take a look at that and make sure that we're.
Confirm with the building inspector.
Yeah, confirm with the building inspector that they're comfortable with that.
So you have no objection to it as long as the building inspector is okay with it. Is that a fair summary?
And that we can still get some windows in it. I don't want blank walls, totally blank sidewalls.
Thank you. Number 5. Oh, this is because the condos the townhomes that are planned along Bellefontaine Boulevard, they're gonna have lots that go down the shared walls. And so the dimensions, again, that were being proposed by the market through Encore, through Red Tail, we're showing something different. So that's why we're proposing this change. We've talked about number 6. Number 8.
Can I ask about number 6?
Sure.
So there are 3 sections in the code
Right.
labeled exceed maximum principal building height. Are they all identical except for the districts mentioned?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, so the 3 sections are under the residential, there's under mixed use and under commercial.
Right.
Right.
And I guess one of my questions is, why is it under commercial since? So mixed use doesn't necessarily have to have residential. Or does it?
I think we often think of it as having residential with it. I guess, Ben, that's an interesting question. It could be a mix of different uses that aren't necessarily all commercial, I suppose, but it has to be on the list of permitted and conditional uses.
Couldn't it be a totally commercial building?
Sure.
Yeah, it's in the commercial land use because you could get the additional height for the building if you met the net zero. You wouldn't be adding any units, any housing units, but you could get the height bonus for the net zero. So it could be an all commercial building scenario that way.
Okay, and then I know we received a public comment about like how it should be. We need to say that the building is certifiable as net zero, not because, you know, the building is built and then it's certified. And would we require them to tear down the floor? And of course we wouldn't. But it does raise the question, what if it's designed to be certified as net zero, and once it's built, it is not certifiable as net zero? Is there any, that we have no recourse, no penalty?
I think, correct me if
No
I'm wrong,
fee.
Abby, I think we decided it had to be designed. There's no other way to do that and rescind that then.
I think that the cleanest way to handle it would be to use the developer's escrow for the city to have a consultant that can review the building plans that are going to the building inspector and to the state. And it would, it'd have to be a third party, similar to how we handle traffic studies, where the developer would basically pay for the city's consultant to review it to make sure that it would meet net zero. And then once that was certified, and assuming that there were no more changes in the submittal that's going in for permitting, we would not have any other recourse at that point. We would just assume that based on the knowledge and expertise of our consultant, that they have met the standards. Because we don't have anybody in-house, I don't think, that would be qualified to review that. And then we wouldn't want to have to incur the additional costs because we don't have a budget in place for it. So it would just be part of the escrow funds.
Okay, and then what about if, I know the voluntary LURA was an issue and it's been fixed to match what Madison has, but the same thing, what if since it's voluntary, what if they get the height bonus for affordable housing units and before their 30-year period, they back out?
I don't understand Laura's enough to know whether what teeth are associated with them, basically, because where we have used them, it's been when the city does have an incentive that we can apply penalty if we find out that they're not meeting the requirements. So where we've used Laura's in the past, it's been usually associated with a TIF incentive. And the agreement does invoke a penalty for any units that aren't in compliance. So I guess I would have to defer to you or to Matt if he has weighed in on that.
Would there be a deed restriction? Would it be enforced through a deed restriction?
I think it would operate that way. I think that is how the restriction would be applied, so that it would run with the property, even if the property changed hands. I just don't know what happens if, you know,
They violate it.
right. Because we would probably want to be able to have a way to, like, we have a compliance certification process that's required when it's a TIF project. And we reserve the right to audit to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the TIF agreement. But we would likely do that if we received a complaint from somebody who said, I applied to occupy a unit, I meet the standards, and I was turned down. That's the most likely scenario where we would step in and look at their rent rolls and make sure that they're in compliance. But I'm not sure how, I don't know what the penalty would be for a traditional LURA.
Well, I'll follow up with Matt again, and like I said, there's active discussions right now between our city attorney and Sean Pfaff.
Yeah.
Okay, so then number 8, we talked about that already. Heliport's gone. 10, I think, is consistent with what we discussed previously as well. That's why I didn't flag it. So 11 is new. I think commercial animal daycare is a conditional use instead of permitted use. I actually don't even remember now why we made that change, but I will say that this is obviously one of those controversial ones when there's dogs barking outside or left outside. So I think we felt that. Do you remember what prompted this? I can't remember.
Our city attorney recommended.
Oh, that's
it.
right. That's what it was. Thank you.
Even in light industrial?
So yes, because I'll give you an example without naming the business. Airport Road Business Park uses light industrial standards, which can also, we also have in that area a combination of high-tech business, daycare, and a doggy daycare. And, we just felt sometimes these uses we just felt the conditional use process was appropriate based on what the attorney had said. And based on an experience I had riding along a bike path there, I would agree. So, again, without trying to mention any business. So, any objection to that? No.
So Middleton's a really dog-friendly city.
I know. Land use regulations. The 33% formula. So this is language that both Alder Hanairo and Ben Rohr from Vanderbilt weighed in on. So that's our current language. I was wondering if you are okay with it.
That looked fine to me. I did have one question or comment on number 2 in that under land use minimums about the 25% of the ground floor area for vehicle parking and access. And I wanted to ask if it would be appropriate to have some sort of I wouldn't want that 25% to be all on the street frontage. In other words, can we have some language that would also deal with the frontage of the building, not just the area, but the street frontage? Because I think we are going to get buildings that are going to have parking on the first floor.
Okay.
And I don't want that to
I'm
be
sure Ben, you and I can
dominating the street frontage.
Mhm.
Ben, do you have any thoughts, or can you think about that in the future?
I'm happy to work.
Yeah, we specifically were trying to curb that situation with this language in terms of the first floor parking facing the right of way.
Yeah.
And so are you saying you want?
Well, I think that I see where that happens, but it doesn't really talk about the frontage. It just talks about the floor area itself. And so, you see what I'm saying? There is a way to, depending upon the building design, there would be a way to dominate the street frontage with parking and still be within the 25%. So, of floor area. That's the thing I was getting at.
Yeah,
So we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we'll come,
I like that because of the approachability, needing to have approachability to that front street side. So
Yeah.
thank you for catching that.
I actually think that would be something that we need to think about in the multifamily districts as well, as a design guideline.
okay. Well, we'll get some language to you for your next meeting. I think we can move pretty quickly here. The next thing I flagged in red was this was language. You had, there was discussion about, and I think former Commissioner Kurt Paulson had brought this to your attention. So this is the new language we're recommending. Instead of variances, going with waivers. Any objection to that language?
I think you're on Article 7.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. I was still in 4.
This is a Kurt.
Yep.
Kurt Paulson.
He's a very nice guy, so
He didn't actually review this language, but this is what Ben worked on, what we worked on and are proposing.
Very good.
Our attorney hasn't reviewed that yet either, but obviously they'll get a shot at that. So I'm not hearing any concerns. I think we're basically done with the zoning code. I do, mindful of the fact we are starting to get to the other half of the hour, approaching 10. I did want to make sure that we do talk about the zoning map, because we're getting a lot of emails, and I think having some direction here so that the public can focus their emails would be helpful, so that we don't have 2 more weeks of emails.
I don't think we're going to be able to avoid more emails.
No, it's fine, but I'm just saying, in the interest of, like, right now, people don't know exactly where we're going with the Middleton Beach Road zoning in particular is what I'm referring to.
Right,
So
but
I guess I wanted some guidance as to what you feel is appropriate, if you're willing to take that up yet, if not.
And you're referring to the existing single family homes
Right,
on
Middleton Beach Road. I just think, since we
Can-
have
can
several
you-
people who've come here.
Can you pull up the map?
Sure.
And we really should be winding down. Like, if there's 1 or 2 things you're looking at,
All right.
please focus right
Well,
now.
Since we do have a representative from Middleton Beach Road here, should we at least have Jenny come on up and
Well,
maybe
the
report?
chair gets to decide that, sir.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, if
I've
could-
read the emails. I think I
Right.
know how people feel. I'm not trying to say I don't want to hear from her, but what I think you're asking, are you asking about the right-hand side on the lake side?
Yes.
Overall?
Yes, specifically that.
Okay.
I'm not bringing up any other topics.
And
The reason I'm doing this and recommending this is because we do have people who are coming to all these meetings. And then secondly, there are differences of opinion on the street. And so it'd be nice to know what your reaction is to the input that you got 2 weeks ago, because that was one of the discussions we had at that meeting, was that we would address public hearing comments at this meeting.
my preference for the zoning for these houses would be to go with what will allow people who have not yet redeveloped their properties to do so in the same way their neighbors have. And I think that means going with the SRH, because it gives them the ability to take their homes up to, again, what would match their neighbors. I would also note, and I know we've gotten a lot of comments in favor of going to the SRM, which technically, I think under state law would be like a downzoning, because it's changing the, I sent the section to you, Mark, that referenced this. We did not get a message, or maybe others have by now, but somebody forwarded to me a message from a Middleton Beach Road resident who was concerned about going to SRM for the very reason that it's going to limit their ability to redevelop. And so I get the desire to, we just talked about reducing impervious surface ratios. But I think, the horse has already left the barn in this area. And it's for that reason that the Water Resources Management Commission, right after they considered the flu map, they talked about the zoning, the shoreland zoning district, and decided not to make any changes because there were only, it was going to have a very insignificant impact to make requirements more stringent along the lakefront, because only a handful of homes, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they said, only a handful of homes would be affected by it. So I am inclined to stay with the SRH because it allows more flexibility for all the residents. And that's just my position.
Mayor, the reason I indicated perhaps it would be appropriate to have members of the public speak was because at the last meeting, I think my recollection was we were okay with SRM or SRH, just let us know what you want. And that I have not yet heard in any definitive terms. I've heard both sides of the story, but I don't know where the neighborhood sits. And that's why I'd suggest.
From my recall, the president sent an email and wrote that she was, as president, not personally, wanted SRM. Do we have a copy of that email?
I will see if I can pull that up. I know that we received an email from the president, Jenny Corwin, yesterday. However, I believe that that was not on behalf of the association. The email that came.
It's not signed that way, I don't think.
It's
Yeah, it's not signed that way.
not signed from the full association. That was just you. Okay. But I think that there was a previous email, which I will also see if I can pull up. From the association. I apologize. This email that I just pulled up is on a different topic.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
And I'm also mindful that Ben is still on the phone. Ben, are you able to stay a little bit longer? Just nod if you want.
Jenny, did
Eyebrow raise.
the
thank
full association send an email with their recommendation for the zoning of the existing single family lots? Did the full neighborhood association weigh in on that, or was it just the individual comments that we received?
I'm sorry, I'm missing your question.
Has the neighborhood association as a whole taken a position on the preferred zoning of Middleton Beach?
We have not. There are definitely differences of opinion, and so we've encouraged people to write individually. And you should have quite a few, I would think, in the last few days that came through.
We do. Yep.
Okay.
Well, and all I was trying to suggest is, it's not that I'm trying to discourage emails. I feel like that's obviously been at some point we need a decision, and we wanted to know what the temperature of we had the public hearing, people had a chance to weigh in, they've weighed in since then. And it just would be nice to know what the direction of the commission is so that people can respond to that.
Given the fact that there's no consensus, I would lean towards the original recommendation of SRH.
I would agree.
And then what I will plan to do is document this and give this to the association representative, Ginny, so that it can be shared with the neighborhood. And here's the rationale. Because I think that's a way to help everyone understand and have the same information instead of individual emails, which again, people are welcome to do that. The public hearing was held, it's over, but obviously there's a process where people can still communicate via email, and they can and will, but at least we know now what the temperature is of the commission here, what your feelings are. So I think that was helpful. Thank you.
Can we talk about the Lycon parcels?
Sure. And I have a modified recommendation there. We, in talking about, in thinking about this further, specifically Abby and I have talked about this. Before you weigh in on it, I think I'm more comfortable with the idea now of having all three parcels be, is it medium industrial?
I am.
Yeah, instead of just two of the three.
That was going to be my question. Why not all three?
Well, and the short answer to that is because, we're trying to balance what the western two parcels that was darker gray are where the main activity, where the extraction or the concrete manufacturing activity is occurring. And this will help accommodate an expansion of that use potentially, to the east. And so that isn't necessarily what we wanted to see in terms of our future land use map and comp plan. But we also recognize that that's really not a good site for mixed use development. And it's the only access point is at an interchange, and pedestrian access is terrible. You'd have to go under the bridge to get to the downtown. It's just not a good place for redevelopment unless everything redevelops. So
how does that is that compatible with the flu map, the comp plan?
well, our flu map has all of these parcels shown as urban mixed use.
Right.
So this would be a future, I think, well, and we didn't specifically talk about this, but I thought about this afterwards, Abby. I mean, a future land use map is what your vision is, what you want it to be. And I think, we have what we have is there today has been there for decades. And that isn't necessarily the long-term vision of the city. But the reality is it's there, and it's an economically productive use of land. And we also want to make sure that we are not downzoning this for how they use the property. That's why we have a modified recommendation.
And to expand the extraction activities onto the eastern parcel that we're now proposing to change to IM, it would still be a conditional use process. It's not permitted.
Yeah, but we don't have much, we don't have a lot of teeth with conditional use. And what happens if they were to change ownership or change uses from the concrete processing to something else that was IM, or that would be permitted because of the zoning. I was just kind of wondering whether we could zone it something that was compatible with the comp plan, but give them grandfather their use in, including all three parcels.
Well, they would be they would have legal non-conforming status, but they wouldn't have the ability to expand or upgrade their use.
I see. They couldn't make any improvements to it.
And they did indicate in the call that we had with their attorneys that they were hoping to make improvements to the eastern parcel. And we actually had never worked with them on that property. And when we pulled up an aerial photograph, we realized that they had created a driveway access on the southern side between parcel 2, we'll call it, and parcel 3 that was not shown on any plans that have been submitted to the city. They are very concerned though about any potential for downzoning. I mean, they would be very concerned if the city doesn't support the IM classification for their property. They had a lot of concerns about that.
Okay, so because of time, is there any other properties you need guidance on tonight?
Well, let's take the easy ones here so that our map can be even more finalized. The 3 open space parcels north of Little C. We have no objection to Alder Henairo's suggestion. It makes all the sense in the world.
Yep.
I can't imagine that anybody here would have a concern, but we just wanted to finalize that.
Yeah.
And then I guess the parcels along High Point Road, north of Greenway, we don't have any concerns there to change that to mixed use. Let's see, recommending mixed use neighborhood, but not avenue or downtown. for the areas shown in, basically from Greenway north to, well, north on the west side. Anyone have any objections to showing that as mixed use neighborhood?
The only question I had was, we're right on the belt line and the
Between the
neighborhood mixed use is limited in height. So it's, I don't know. That was my only thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can get up to 4 stories with that lure, but likely it's only 3.
Yeah.
The research park was going to be a 4-story, allow up to 4 stories.
What
The
about
lots
just-
are not as deep.
Mhm.
Well, actually the same with Avenue.
What about just multifamily zoning?
Well, very frankly, the reason why we didn't propose mixed use originally is because we were remembering some previous discussions at, past plan commission meetings about trying to discourage housing along the Beltway.
And I think the land uses that are there now are mostly small offices. And
true.
we recently approved another small office. So if we zoned it multifamily, those wouldn't comply, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So no objection to that. And then we have Waconia Lane, wasn't on this list earlier, but we had a request. Someone pointed out, and we agree with this, those 5 parcels on the southern end are under 5,000 square feet. And so we thought we're proposing SRH for those now. Completely comfortable.
That's good because they are a lot like MBR.
Right.
And
Right.
I did doors over there and it's.
So that wasn't in your memo, but
Yep.
so that leaves only one project, which is the Allen Boulevard site, and that might be a larger discussion.
I agree.
The soccer field.
Yeah, let's talk about that when we're fresh.
And then that also leaves the lighting discussions. It's almost 10, so I assume you're done. And we are discussing this again next meeting, so we'll save the lighting ordinance then. Hopefully you in general, do you like the direction we've done? I guess it'd be nice to know that. Okay,
yeah.
Can you give us the feedback that you like it?
We like it. I like it. We like it.
Is there any objection to the changes? Like, okay, fine, we'll just knock this out. Is it, can you go back to that quickly, Daphne? If nobody has, if you're okay with all this, then we can update our code and
I do have a question about it, and that's another comment that we received from the Cross Plains trustee about some municipalities imposing light curfews on business parking lots and signs. Do we have that in the code?
No.
I would consider it. I would think MHS's new stadium might be an example. I don't know if anybody's driven by it at night, but I'm like, is there a game tonight? I guess not.
Is there a consensus you'd like us to research that as well? Like curfews?
I know we talked about it for the car.
Yeah, for the auto dealers.
Yeah. So if it's something reasonable, I would see a reason to have that, because if people selling cars have to turn their lights off by 8 o'clock-ish, maybe it's 7 o'clock-ish, it's like an hour after they close or something, to have the school have their lights on all night, or another business, we should probably encourage the night sky initiative, and also saving of those tax dollars. Every penny counts.
So we'll research that. Is there any other research you'd like us to do for the next meeting? I guess I'll ask that open-ended question too, because that way we can maybe at the next meeting.
I had sent you an email, Mark, regarding studying maybe having a design requirement limiting building lengths. One building that comes to mind is the Trotta building. And right now there's nothing that limits lengths of buildings, which are just become kind of, pedestrian unfriendly, to tell you the truth.
We do have standard that says once you're at a certain length, you have to do certain design, enhancements.
And Trotta might comply with that, actually. I mean,
I was gonna say, I think it has a little bit of an offset.
it has some offsets here and there, but
So,
I think taking a look at that issue, the only other issue that I had from a design perspective was, if we could figure out a way to encourage more pedestrian interaction with the sidewalk or the streetscape on buildings. So individual entries on multifamily buildings or in mixed-use buildings, some way of trying to get some more of that interaction, pedestrian interaction.
For multifamily, you said?
Multifamily or mixed use, because mixed use has multifamily on first floor in some cases.
a little off the subject, there was a building I really liked in Madison that had family housing up above or mixed use above, and then the stores at the base. So I've been looking at it every time I drive by it. But I realized all the parking is in the back, so they have a front door on the street and then they have a back door. But since people pull up and park, when I went to use it, they actually had locked the front door.
Oh.
We've
They
had
do
that
that
problem in Middleton.
Greenway
Hills.
too.
Yeah, we've got
So
that.
I'm not mad about that, but at the same time, why do we have two doors if that's the plan? I mean, at that point, maybe don't have the back door, so they actually have to walk around, so it looks like they're walking. So I can't figure out why we have these buildings
Well,
and then it doesn't look like it, but it might be a fire hazard.
well, and in the case of Middleton Hills, we've forced the grocery store to have a side, to have what they called the marketplace entrance, as well as all the other shops, the nail salon and others. But the parking's on the other side, and it's hard to lease these spaces. The perception is they want the parking right by their door. And I understand that. So most of those places allow and access on both sides. With Middleton Hills, there was actually a condition of approval on the grocery store that had to be open, but then they started closing it earlier, and that led to some friction. So anyway, I hear what you're saying. So any other research from any other members that you want us to bring back at the next meeting? Great. Thank you.
Hey, Ben, while you're on the phone, thank you very much for your efforts and really good work.
Yes, thank you, Ben.
And of course, staff.
Well, I think, we're, nearing the finish line here, but you should all be really proud of what you've put together here, city staff, committees, this committee, council leadership, everybody involved. You're going to have one of the most progressive codes in the state, and definitely the most progressive code that Vanderwall and Associates has ever done. And you've really transformed an old suburban style zoning ordinance into an urban full service community zoning ordinance. And I think that was the goal that we set out to do. And I think you guys have accomplished it. So kudos to you as well.
Thanks for letting us know that, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Thank you, staff. With that, have a good night, everyone. We are adjourned.
Agreement.
I don't know if you noticed, but she was like,
Yeah.